Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Today we are going to talk about the test of trust. James begins his letter by explaining the different tests we will go through in our Christian walk. James began by commenting on the purpose of trials and growing our faith. And today we are going to see that the reason why we don't endure trials is because we don't fully trust God. James writes, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him." James is continuing his thought from verse 4, where he said that the purpose of trials is to make us complete, lacking in nothing. But then James acknowledges that since we are not complete in our faith, we need to ask God for wisdom to fill in the gaps of our faith. Now, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to see our situation from God's point of view instead of our point of view. Therefore, James says, let him ask, which is a command. He's not giving advice, but a command to ask God for wisdom because he is the only person who has the resources to address your problems. You don't need to ask God to change your circumstances. You don't need to ask God to give you more resources. You need God to give you his wisdom or his point of view so you can properly assess what to do in your situation. Now, how do we know that God will give us wisdom? Look at how James describes God, who gives generously to all without reproach. Remember who was James's older brother? James knew exactly how generous God is because he saw it in his brother. Listen to how Jesus describes God the Father. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be open. Or which one of you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, who are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? You don't have to look that hard to see that even human fathers give good things to their children. So why wouldn't your heavenly Father not give you wisdom when you need it? James adds that God gives without reproach. The word reproach means to address someone with disapproval. Do you see the picture? God doesn't guilt trip you when he listens to your prayer. He doesn't sigh or shake his head when he answers your prayer. God doesn't give you something today and ask for it back tomorrow. He gives without hesitation and without any disappointment. So James gave us a picture of the Father's heart, and now he wants to examine our hearts. Why don't we pray to God more often if we say that we trust in him? It is because we doubt. Look at what James writes. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. How many of us can say that we never have doubts? So is James saying that the minute you have some doubts that God just tuned you out? It is very important to understand what James is saying here. He is not saying that we will never have doubts. He is not saying that we should blindly trust God without any struggle. You see, sometimes we have doubts not because we question God's character, but we question why God is allowing certain things in our lives, right? There's a story in Mark chapter 9 where a father brought his son to Jesus. His son was mute and would often have seizures. He first tried having Jesus' disciples heal his son, but they couldn't do it. So with his final act of desperation, he brings his son to Jesus and he says this, "But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Then look at how Jesus responds. If you can, all things are possible for one who believes. I want you then to see the honesty in the Father's response. I believe, help my unbelief. The Father is saying, I do believe in God, but I am also struggling with doubts because I just don't understand why God has allowed my son to suffer for so long. And do you want to know the good news? Jesus doesn't say, well, since you have some doubts, God will not answer you. Instead, Jesus answers the Father's prayer and healed his son even though the father struggled with doubts. So we see that James is not condemning this type of doubt. So what kind of doubt is James talking about here? Look at the words that James uses to describe the person who doubts. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. The word double-minded is literally to have a divided soul. It is like the idea of being a hypocrite. A hypocrite is somebody who is two-faced. They wear a mask and give off a certain perception, but their true face is something entirely different. So a double-minded person is a person who seems to trust God from the outside, but he doesn't really trust God from the inside. The word doubt in this passage means to make judgments on God's character and abilities. A doubting person acts as a judge, in other words, over God. You see, a person who doubts in this way is not a person who struggles in their faith. It is a person who says, I trust in God, but doesn't bother to pray or just goes through the motion of prayer because he or she has already made the judgment of when God will and won't answer. James asks this picture of a doubting person. For the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. I can figure out my problems at work. I don't need God's help. Oh shoot, I lost my job. I'll go to God for help. Okay, this is a small problem. I can handle it. Oh shoot, I ran out of options. I should go to God. Back and forth this person goes like the waves in the ocean. You see, God knows when you go to Him as a last resort instead of going to Him like a child who trusts his father. And doesn't it matter how people ask us to help them? If one of my sons came up to me and said, I know you probably don't want to, and I don't even know if you are capable of doing this, and I have already asked everybody else, but Dad, can you help me with my homework? How hurtful would it be for your child to go to everybody else for help instead of you because he or she thinks you are unable or unwilling to help? You want to know the reason why this type of doubt is such a big deal to God? Because it shows Him that you don't really consider Him a loving Father who wants to answer. This is what the test of trust comes down to. The good news is that even when you do have legitimate doubts, like any loving Father, God will reassure you that you can trust Him even when you struggle to do so at times. And if you want more evidence on why you should trust God, remember what the Apostle Paul wrote. He who did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, how will He not also with Him graciously give us all things? God is willing to sacrifice His Son for you. Why wouldn't He give you wisdom? Why wouldn't He answer your prayers? Whatever trial you are going through, remember that you can trust God to give you the wisdom or perspective you need to endure it. All you must do is trust Him and ask. Thank you to today's sponsor, On Reverence. They offer a free digital worship music app called Maskill. If you want to find out more, I'll leave some links below in the description box. If you missed the last video about the purpose of trials, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you!